Okay, so in my last video I was talking about tuning these toms. There are 3 toms. There's a 12-inch tom, a 13-inch tom, and a 16-inch tom. I'm not going to review anything I talked about in the last video, just watch the last video. So this is a follow-up to my first video. So what I've done at this point is we're done tuning the bottom heads. So I put the top heads back on. The top heads we're using here on this kit are these black Evans Onyx heads. I think they're pretty good heads. They're pretty good sounding. So the first thing I did is I finger tightened the tension rods all the way around. And the next step is I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other heads. Is after I finger tightened it, I'm going to push on the side of the head all the way around to make sure that the head is properly seated on the drum shell all the way around. So we have even tension more or less around it. Now they make all these devices that are supposed to sort of mechanically help you do these things, and I'm sure they do help. I at this point just haven't decided that I like them very much. I prefer to do it this way, and this seems to be a little quicker for me. So what I'm doing first is I'm going around all the drums, making sure all the tension rods are about even. And so when we're done here, we're going to have some pretty floppy heads, but we can start tuning pretty immediately. So the way that I'm approaching the tuning for the top heads to the bottom is my goal is actually to have the bottom heads, the top heads be a little lower in pitch than the bottom heads. Here's why. When you hit a drum head, it's going to stretch and the pitch is going to bend up, and then as the sound decays, the pitch goes back down again. Now what you want to do with a drum on the tom-toms is when you hit it, you want it to stretch, and at that immediate impact stretching, you want it to sing and make the sound that you want. But then as it decays, it's going to get lower in pitch again, creating dissonance between the top head and the bottom head, and that essentially helps it to almost muffle itself, making it unnecessary to put all kinds of tape and towels and all this stuff on your drums, whatever you use to muffle. Now, if the sound doesn't cut out as quickly as you want to, then you want to use these extra devices to help you. But if you want a nice, live, good-sounding drum sound, that will do the trick. So, like I said, just to repeat myself, all these heads, I want them slightly detuned so that when I hit them, they'll stretch out, match the pitch I want, and then stretch back down again, or de-stretch back down again, and then kind of cancel the sound out. So it'll create kind of a natural muffling. Okay, so I have no idea what these drums sound like. I just went around and made sure all the tension rods were where I wanted them, and that the heads were touching all the way around, and that the rims are even. So I'm going to hit all 3 drums and just kind of see what they sound like. Okay, so they're all pretty dead sounding right now. They're just too loose. So I'm going to go around just about a quarter of a turn around each drum. All the way around. Now when you do small changes like this, you don't have to cross lugs, because we're just making little small changes. But whenever you make big drastic changes, you definitely want to make sure you're crossing over from one lug to the opposite lug so that that rim stays seated evenly on the drum. Alright, let's see what this sounds like. We're almost there. So I'm not real crazy about any of the sounds I'm getting right now, so I need to start thinking critically about what I'm going to do. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do to start is I'm just going to work on this drum. Now, I'm working with a lower end drum set right now, so in general lower end drum sets are a little bit harder to tune anyway. The wood isn't as consistent and you don't have a whole lot of tone in it. So we're going to do the best we can to make these drums sound good for what they are. So the thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to put my finger in the middle again like I did on the other side and tap from tension rod to tension rod to see where I'm at in tuning with this head. Okay, so immediately I noticed this one was lower, so I'm going to tune this up. And so I'm doing one side and then the other side, so I have even tension. That's a little better. Let's see what the drum sounds like. Alright, that's not too bad. I'm going to come back to it though. So now I'm going to do this one the same way. Now this head just seems like it's just still really loose to me, so I'm just going to tighten it all up a little bit. couple lugs here are a little high, so I'm going to detune them a little bit. Alright, let's get this away from all the other noise. I'm having a hard time hearing what needs to happen with that drum. Alright, so I'm going to move on. Okay, all this is still really loose, so I'm going to tighten it all up. These onyx heads are pretty thick heads. They inherently kind of dampen the sound a bit, which can be nice depending on what you want. But something that I'm noticing for myself personally is that these onyx heads, in combination with the bottom heads that we're using, I'm not sure that I dig them. Alright, the floor tom, that's okay for the floor tom. Let's see if I can make this one a little better. That just sounds really dead to me. We need to figure this out. Alright, I'm not crazy about the sound I'm getting there, but let's go back to the first drum and see what it sounds like, see what we can do to it. Alright, I'm having an easier time hearing this probably because it's higher in pitch by nature. So this one sounds okay, but I'm just going to detune it a little bit, because as it decays, it's hitting that sweet spot I want. And remember, I want that sweet spot as it's on its first impact, so that's what I'm going to try to attempt to get this drum to do here. I did mention earlier, this is, lower quality level of drums, so to some extent, the drum can be the problem itself. So at this point, I think I'm happy with the floor tom, and I think I might be happy with this one for what it is. But this second tom is not sounding very good, so I need to decide what to do here. So one of the issues I'm running into here is I think this drum wants to go lower, but the head is already pretty loose, so I can't really get the head any lower to get it to where I want. And so what I mean by this is the shell itself, I think, wants a lower pitch than what I'm achieving right now, but this head's already tuned pretty low. I can't really go higher with it because I can't have it being higher than the 12-inch drum. So we may have to compromise here a little bit. Okay, something I'm going to check on this is the bottom head. Sometimes, it's been a day since I worked on the bottom head, so the bottom heads could settle and change to another pitch. So what I'm going to do is see what's going on with it. So, sounds like it detuned a bit. Okay, so here's another method I'm going to try here, because I'm just not getting anything out of this drum. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep hitting the drum and just gradually go around until it starts sounding better, and then we'll see where it lands. gosh, this is so weird. Terrible time to make a video with these drums, I think. I like these two, they sound pretty good. This guy's a monster though, we need to figure out what's going on with this one. Okay, so if you get to a point like where I just got, where I'm a little bit frustrated and I'm not sure what I need to do to a drum, what you can always do is detune the whole thing and try again. But I think what I'm going to do in this case, since this drum is kind of fighting where the pitches of the head want to go, I'm just going to detune the whole thing, and then I'm just going to make gradual adjustments all the way around while I hit it, and then see if I can come up with something more pleasant than what I had before. So if you hear that, it's pretty loose. Okay, so it's kind of low and growly, but that's kind of where I want to be. So let's see what they sound like with the other drums. Okay, so the problem I'm seeing right now is not so much the pitch, it's just the head tension's really loose to get to that pitch. That's not too bad there. Let's see if we can get it in tune with itself. So, now I finally feel like it sounds halfway decent. You can literally spend hours and hours and hours tuning drums. Things like room temperature can change the pitch of the drums because of the hot and the cold, stretching and unstretching or de-stretching the heads. There are little nuances from tension rod to tension rod that may be off that you want to correct and change. But not only that, your head choices are going to affect your tuning and how you do it. The combinations of drums that you have, the combinations of top heads and bottom heads. So like in this case we have Onyx top heads and we have G1 bottom heads. So if you have a different set of heads, the drums are going to respond differently. So you may want to experiment with your drums, trying different types of heads to see what really works for you. So we're just dealing with 3 toms in this situation, but if you have more toms or less toms, then what I generally do is the same approach, but when I was talking about intervals in the other video, I would kind of decide where I want to be. Like if I have more drums, predetermine sort of the intervals that I want and then try to get there. Or if I have less drums, let's say I only have 2 toms, usually what I do is just tune them a 1/4 apart, and I've always been happy with that interval. I feel like when you have them a 1/5 apart, they sound, even though they're not the same pitch, they almost sound like they're the same thing. And I definitely don't tune them in octaves apart. There's not a whole lot of difference in the sound that you're getting. So right now this is what we got. And I think I'm going to stick with it because we're just doing a quick tuning, general tuning on some cheaper drums with some pretty nice heads on them, and just trying to get them to sound as good as they can in a short period of time, knowing they're really just going to be used for practicing and stuff, but you still want them to be inspiring to you and sounding good even if you're just practicing. Beautiful is you can hear the difference in the pitch in every drum, and so altogether it sounds pretty good. So I'm a big fan of taking drums and tuning them individually if they don't have to be tuned together. These you have to tune them together, but then you work on them individually, so when you put them together you have a musical instrument. Now I don't have a video like this up yet, but I'll eventually put up a video on bass drum tuning and snare drum tuning next time I have the opportunity. Thanks for watching.